Alright everyone, here's another Comic Clerks, video, and I'm here to talk to you about Flash Fury of Firestorm. And this video will contain spoilers, so I'm just letting you know beforehand. Alright, so we start 2 years ago at a football game, and the Falcons have just won. They're congratulating a guy named Jeff, who seems, he's going to be getting some scholarships, he's the MVP of this game. This is when the particle accelerator explodes, and while trying to run into the stadium, Jeff helps a teammate and gets caught in the dark matter blast. So we skip back in, we go back into the future, present day, and we have a team trying to stabilize Professor Stein. Cisco believes they only have a few days to find a solution, and Caitlin believes that they need to find someone like Ronnie, to stabilize Professor Stein. Caitlin has already done the research and has found two candidates, Harry Hewitt and Jefferson Jackson. So all Caitlin needs is their blood to test if they're a match for Professor Stein. And this is when Barry takes off, and I don't know how he does it, but he gets both blood samples from both of them. All they felt was a little prick on their neck. So he was just moving too fast for them to see it, and they didn't notice themselves bleeding at any point. I don't know, but Caitlin gets to work on finding a match. So we get to Joe and Iris, and it looks like Iris is looking at some old pictures, and Joe starts reminiscing with her about her obsession with mint, chocolate, chip, ice cream, and then he lets her know she doesn't have to meet with her mom, and she believes that she has to meet with her. You haven't met your mom and seen your mom in 20 years. I would meet with her too. So we get to the CCPD, and Patty catches Barry and asks for his help on a case. Supposedly someone has seen a man shark walking around, and we have another awkward flirting moment between them two, and Patty asks Barry to work on the case with her, but Barry declines, saying that he doesn't want to work on any metahuman cases, and he tells her he will run a test. And this is when Joe walks up and asks her about the shark case, and she tells him that it's going good and heads off. This is when Joe asks Barry what is with him and Iris flirting with his partners, and Barry doesn't know what he's talking about. This is when he gets a text from Cisco about Stein. This is the perfect moment to head out to avoid this conversation. So Professor Stein is up and awake, showing, the matches. He's looking at the matches, and Caitlin's choice is Henry because, he's a scientist, yada, yada, yada. He's pretty much like all of them. But it looks like Jefferson matches Professor Stein more. But, Caitlin still wants Henry. She still believes Henry is the better choice. So Barry believes they should check both of them out. And so Barry and Stein go to check out Jefferson. And Caitlin goes to contact Henry. And Cisco goes to find more solutions for Stein. This is when we see Harrison Wells just walking around Star Labs. Like I said before, didn't they say they upgraded Star Labs security? But everyone seems to be just walking into Star Labs without, nobody being alerted or anything. Even though he's from a different universe, somebody still should be alerted. He doesn't look like he has any powers at this time. So looks like in the 2 years, Jefferson has become a mechanic, and Professor Stein insults his music, and Jefferson introduces himself as Jax and tells him he can put on Celine Dion for him. He thinks he has that CD, the Titanic CD in the back. So Barry and Professor Stein, they're trying to convince Jax to come back to Star Labs with them so they can check him out. And it looks like Jack is trying to put that day behind him. It looks like, that hit he took ruined his football scholarships, and so Barry leaves their number, and they head out. We get to Joe and Francine, and they're waiting on Iris for this meeting. And Francine tells Iris how proud of her she is. And Iris asks her why is she even there and why now. Francine wants to make it right with her, and Iris says she should first apologize. This is when Iris declines Francine wanting to be her life, and she wishes her well and tells her to leave. At Star Labs, looks like Caitlin has already told Henry everything, and he's on board for being Firestorm. And him and Professor Stein seem to click well together and everything. And Cisco says if this works, they'll have 2 Professor Steins. So he puts the splicer on Henry and tells Henry, to touch Stein to engage the Matrix. So they touch hands and they glow for a second, but nothing happens. They don't fuse together or anything. And Henry is pissed off, that it doesn't work. And he storms off, but as he gets to the elevator, we see some of the Firestorm energy, cover his hand. This is when we go to Mercury Labs, and it looks like Dr. McGee is looking for a replacement for Caitlin when the alarm in the building is going off. Someone has broken in and, taken something, and she recognizes Harrison Wells. He just goes into Mercury Labs and takes something also. It's like he's just breaking into everywhere. Nobody, at least Mercury Labs, the alarms went off, But anyways, he's just breaking into everywhere. So Dr. McGee, she calls Joe, and him and Patty show up, and she tells him what she saw. So Patty says they should call Barry, and Joe tells her no because Wells killed his mother. And she tells him she's not good at lying, and Joe tells her that she needs to learn quick. So we get back to the CCPD, and Francine is waiting on Joe, and he wants her to leave, but she tells him that she has McGregor's, and she only has to the end of the year, and she wants her daughter to know her. That's pretty logical, I guess. You've been gone for all these years, you got a serious disease, you want to make it right with your kid after you abandon her. Alright, I get it. So we go to Star Labs, and looks like Jackson's shown up, and he wants to know about the treadmill, and this is when Cisco calls it the cosmic treadmill, and I love when they drop names like that. Jax thinks he's there to get his knee fixed. So they start to explain to him about being Firestorm, and he declines. He doesn't want nothing to do with it. This is when Caitlin starts to insult him, not jumping at the chance to become a superhero. And he leaves, and Barry tells Caitlin, that Jax may be Stein's last chance, and, maybe she shouldn't have been so rough on him. And Caitlin, she's upset that he didn't agree, to have superpowers, because, if any of us said that somebody could give us superpowers, I'm sure we would jump at the chance at it. And she wants Cisco to agree with her, and Cisco is like, oh yeah, he would definitely jump at the chance to, get powers. He rolls his eyes at this because, we already know he has powers that he doesn't want them to know about. So Caitlin leaves, she goes to find Henry so they can try again. At Barry's lab, he gives Patty the results for the teeth, and it seems like they're regular human teeth. This is when Patty leaves, while she's acting really, really weird. She's trying not to spill the beans of what she's already learned, trying to keep the secret, and tells him that the reason she's acting weird is because of something Joe told her that he had to hide some information about a case they're working on from him. So Barry goes and finds Joe and asks him about it, and Joe tells Barry about how Francine is dying, and seems like Iris doesn't know yet. And Joe tells Barry not to worry about the Patty situation, and Joe asks him what's up with him and Patty, and Barry tells that he likes Patty, but she's just not Iris. Alright, Barry, you need to get over Iris. Come on now. It's time to move on. Hopefully they might put you with Iris, but I'm liking Patty a little bit more than Iris right now. So hopefully they put you with Patty for the moment. So Joe tells him that he needs to explore something new also. What I'm saying, he needs to move on and, leave Iris alone for a minute. So we go to Henry's lab and someone is asking him, for his nuclear results. And Henry doesn't have them and this guy threatens to fire him. This is when Henry freaks out and sets off. His energy starts to wrap around him and he destroys everything. With the team, they see that Henry is on the news, and it looks like Cisco has pulled up, a sealed criminal record of Henry, and now Caitlin's upset that she ran Jax away. So we cut to another scene. Joe tells Iris the news about Francine, and Iris is still suspicious about her, but Joe tells her to give her a chance. So with Jax, Caitlin shows up at his work. She comes to apologize and tells him that they really need his help. And she tells him about Ronnie and how he saved the city. And Jax realizes that Ronnie is the one who flew into the black hole. And Jax tells her how he lost his way into college because of the dark matter. And Caitlin tells him that he may have lost his college, scholarship, but he gained, powers to be a hero and to be part of a team. This is when the lights start to flicker and it looks like Henry is showing up. He's looking for Caitlin. So he hits Jack with one of his blasts and blames Caitlin for what's happening to him. This is when Jay picks up a part and throws it at the back of Henry's head, knocking him out. And they both run so they can get to Star Labs. So at Star Labs, Stein isn't doing too well, and Jax agrees to merge with him. So Cisco puts the splicer on the Jax, and him and Stein touch, fusing into Firestorm. Jax wants to know when they'll be able to take it for a spin, and it looks like now is the best time because Henry is at the high school draining energy. So Flash and Firestorm team up again and show up to try to calm Henry down. He is furious that someone else has the Firestorm Matrix, and Caitlin comes up with a plan on stopping him by making him angry. So making him angry would probably just short him out. So Flash and Firestorm antagonize him until Henry pretty much uses up all his energy, and Flash congratulates Jax on his first time, and the professor does also in his head. So we cut to where Iris is, and she meets up with her mom, and it looks like she's checked up on her, and it looks like the disease was the truth. And Iris also finds something else out, that Francine has a son that she's been hiding from him, and she wants Francine to leave and to stay away from them. And if Joe knew he had a son, it would crush him. And Iris tells Francine, to leave. And this is when she storms out. So I'm wondering if, the son is Wally West. Because, in the comics, he's her cousin. Or is he a nephew? I think it's his nephew or cousin. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So, introducing someone as Joe's son, I'm thinking it might be Wally. So that's kind of a little dropper right there. So hopefully, we see Wally West soon. So with the team, it looks like, Henry is in the pipeline until he decides to be quiet. And it looks like Firestorm is going to be going on a training trip to realize their full potential. Caitlin gives Jax Ronnie's compass, telling him that he will always find his way home. And Cisco seems to have improved the Spicer. And this is when Stein tells him that he needs to tell his friends about his powers. They say their goodbyes and, Firestorm shoots out. So this is, Barry starts, giving us a speech on taking chances. We see Caitlyn changing the Firestorm identity, Firestorm flying, Iris crying. And this is when Barry stops and he is watching Patty in his Flash outfit. This is when he's grabbed by a shark man. And it looks like it's King Shark to me, but I don't know for sure yet. Nobody really said anything. But he tells Barry, that Zoom wants him dead. This is when Patty comes out. She starts firing at King Shark, and he turns his attention on her, but is hit behind by another blast. So Flash gets up and runs to this guy, asking him who he is, and the guy turns around and shows him that it's Wells. So I'm wondering I'm ready for, Tuesday to come back around again, you guys, and I'm ready to see the next episode to see, Barry's reaction on how this even happened or what Earth, this Wells is from. So, hope you guys enjoy, leave your comments in the comment section. Tell me what you liked about this episode, what you didn't like, and I hope you enjoyed, you guys. Have a good day.